1. The illusion of love. Why you were programmed to believe. They told you love would save you, that if you were kind, generous, emotionally available, she would see it, feel it, and stay. So you played your part. You texted her back right away. You paid for dinner. You opened up about your childhood. And when she left, you blamed yourself. Maybe I wasn't confident enough. Maybe I wasn't ambitious enough. Maybe I just wasn't enough. But what if the problem was never you? What if the entire story of love you've been fed since Disney movies and church sermons and high school locker room talks was built on a fantasy designed not to liberate you, but to contain you? Schopenhauer didn't believe in romantic love the way modern culture worships it. He called it nature's trick, a biological theater meant to ensure reproduction, not happiness. He argued that when a man thinks he's falling in love, he's really just a puppet in a chemical drama, where dopamine, oxytocin, and testosterone play the leads. You think you're choosing her because of her heart or her soul, but it's her hip-to-waist ratio, her youth, her fertility cues. This isn't love. It's legacy management, dressed up in poetry. So why does it feel so real? Why does heartbreak feel like a death? Because evolution doesn't care if you're happy, it cares if you reproduce. And nature found a way to make the illusion of connection feel so intense that you'd risk your life for it. That illusion is the bait, the real hook responsibility, provision, sacrifice. Ask yourself this: if love was real, why does it expire the moment you lose your job? Why does she say I love you in the honeymoon phase, and I'm not happy when you stop playing the hero? Is that love, or is it a contract based on silent performance? And don't mistake this for bitterness. This is clarity, because once you see the game, you can stop playing on autopilot. You can stop trading your time, your peace, your soul for validation from someone who doesn't owe you anything. Look around. Dating apps turned love into a lottery. One guy gets 100 matches. 10 guys get ghosted. The market doesn't care about your kindness. It cares about status, looks, leverage. If you're not the man who owns the yacht, you're the man who funds the girl's Bali trip by simping in her comment section. Harsh. Maybe. But let's be honest, how many times did you sell pieces of your masculinity for the promise of love? How many times did you walk on eggshells just to not scare her away, and she still walked? So, what if love isn't real? At least not the way you've been taught. Marcus Aurelius said, "Don't hope that events will turn out the way you want. Welcome events in whichever way they happen. This is the path to peace." Maybe the truth isn't that love is a lie, but that the version of love you were taught was never built for men like you. Not the man who leads. Not the man who questions. Not the man who refuses to be used as an emotional vending machine. You're not broken for feeling this way. You're not toxic for noticing the double standards. You're awake, and waking up hurts. But pain is clarity, and clarity is power. So now the real question becomes, not how do I get her back, but what am I building that no one can take from me? Because she doesn't owe you love, and that's a good thing because you don't need it to win. You were programmed to chase a dream. Now it's time to design your own, one that doesn't collapse the moment someone else walks away. One that starts with truth, not illusion. And that's the real beginning of freedom. 2. Schopenhauer's warning love as nature's trick, not salvation. You think you chose her? That you fell in love because of some deep cosmic connection your souls aligned. Your hearts recognized each other? No. You were chosen by something older than thought, something colder than poetry, by biology, by the will to survive. Schopenhauer didn't romanticize love. He gutted it. He stripped the velvet curtains off the stage and exposed the raw, primitive machinery beneath. He wrote that love, this thing we glorify in songs, movies, and vows, is a trick played by nature, a sleight of hand, a bait and switch where passion is the hook and legacy is the catch. Ever wonder why you're drawn to her face shape, her scent, her voice? It's not magic, it's metrics, ratios, evolutionary algorithms hard-coded into your nervous system. David Buss, the evolutionary psychologist, echoes Schopenhauer 2 centuries later. Human mating strategies are rooted in reproductive advantage, not in romance, not in fairy tales, but in survival. So when you see a woman walk into a room and your heart jumps, your voice stumbles, and you forget every plan you had, ask yourself, is this love? Or is this instinct dragging me back into the biological theater? That rush you feel, that ache when she's gone, that craving for her attention, it's not proof of compatibility. It's nature's drug, designed to keep you chasing long enough to reproduce. And once that mission is done, the chemicals fade, the high wears off, and suddenly, miros, the person you thought was your soulmate feels like a stranger holding a knife to your bank account. But society doesn't want you to see this. It glamorizes the illusion. If you love her enough, she'll stay. If you open up, she'll love the real you. No, brother. She was programmed too, but differently. Her system is built to screen for protection, provision, and power. It's not evil. It's survival. Just like yours. Schopenhauer said, "Love is nothing but the conscious trick of the species to ensure its continued existence." That's it. Strip away the sonnets, the spark, the Instagram posts, and what's left is obligation dressed as devotion. So why do good guys always lose? Because good guys play by the script. They believe that self-sacrifice equals loyalty, that if they give enough time, enough emotion, enough money, they'll earn her love. But love isn't earned. It's extracted. And once you're no longer a valuable resource, the system finds a reason to discard you. And that's the heartbreak you never saw coming. Not just losing her, but realizing the entire equation was rigged. But here's the shift: you're not a victim. You're an asset that was never taught how to guard its value. That changes today, because once you see the illusion, you're no longer trapped by it. You stop looking for salvation in someone else's eyes. You stop begging for the love you were told you needed. And you start building a life that doesn't require her permission. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Translation: she doesn't owe you love, and nature doesn't promise fairness, but you do owe yourself awareness. You were sold salvation through suffering. You were told to chase a dream that was never yours. Now you rebuild, not by rejecting love, but by refusing to be its fool. So, the next time you feel that pull, that high, that aching need to prove yourself, pause, breathe. Ask yourself the only question that matters. Is this love, or just the oldest trap in human history? Because once you know the answer, the chains start to fall. And that's when the real man begins to rise. 3. Nietzsche and the will to power transcending romantic dependence. Let's say you've already seen through the illusion. You realize that love, as sold by Hollywood and Hallmark, is often nothing more than a clever packaging of instinct and social expectation. But then the question hits harder: if not love, then what? If not this story of finding the one, then what's the point of it all? This is where Nietzsche steps in not to comfort you, but to challenge you. Unlike Schopenhauer, who viewed life as suffering and love as a trap, Nietzsche took it further. He didn't just say the game is rigged, he said, good. Now win anyway. His answer to pain, loss, and betrayal wasn't withdrawal. It was transformation. He called it the will to power, not the desire to dominate others, but the strength to transform chaos into creation, to turn wounds into weapons. You were ghosted, lied to, abandoned when you were at your lowest. That's not the end of you. That's the raw material. The clay you mold into something no one can take from you. You texted her too quickly. She lost interest. And now you're replaying every word, every silence, wondering what you did wrong. But what if the real issue isn't that you chased her, but that you weren't chasing your mission? Nietzsche didn't find salvation in another person's arms. He found it in becoming, in crafting yourself like a sculptor, in bleeding truth onto the page like a madman, in laughing through despair like a warrior with nothing left to lose. He never married, never settled. He died alone, yes, but he died undefeated, because he never bowed to the illusion. Ask yourself, is she really the one, or are you just afraid of being alone with your potential? The modern man is starving not for love, but for purpose. You've been taught to outsource meaning to romance, to hand the keys of your identity to a woman who can walk away at any moment. That's not love. That's dependency in a tuxedo. The gym, the grind, the craft. It's not a performance for her. It's resurrection for you. You're suffering. It's not a curse. It's a crucible. And the version of you that rises from it will be unrecognizable to the man who begged for affection. Nietzsche wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Your why cannot be her. It must be you, your mission, your fire, your legacy. You don't need her to believe in you. You need to believe in your becoming. Because once you stop chasing comfort and start chasing creation, something changes. You become magnetic not because you're trying to impress, but because you no longer need to. She doesn't owe you love. And that's not tragic. That's liberating. Because once you stop begging for love, you start building the kind of life that commands respect. A life where you're not just reacting to the world, you're shaping it. That's the will to power. So the next time you feel that hollow ache, the urge to call her, to ask why, to rewind the memories, pause. Instead, ask yourself, what masterpiece could I build with this pain? Because in the end, you weren't meant to be someone's savior or their slave. You were meant to be your own creator. Start now. 4. Eastern wisdom, Stoicism, and the art of emotional detachment. You gave her your heart. She gave you silence. You told yourself it was bad timing, that maybe she was just busy, just confused. But deep down, you felt it. You were too available, too open, too easy to reach. And in that moment, the message was clear. The more you gave, the less you were worth. So why does it work like that? Why does being vulnerable, honest, and emotionally expressive, the things they say women want, backfire so often? Let's break it down. You were trained to believe that love is emotional transparency, that strength is softness, that to get close, you need to let your guard down. But the Stoics and the Eastern masters before them taught the opposite. Marcus Aurelius didn't beg for affection. Epictetus didn't cry when someone ghosted him. Lao Tzu didn't chase closure. Because they understood a law of power, we've forgotten emotions are real, but they're not commands. You feel heartbreak. Good. It means you cared. But it doesn't mean you act from that place. Stoicism isn't about becoming a robot. It's about training your mind to ride the storm without letting it drown you. Lao Tzu said, "He who conquers others is strong. He who conquers himself is mighty." Modern men are addicted to reaction. You see her post a thirst trap on Instagram after leaving you and your gut screams. Respond, retaliate, reach out. But what if you did nothing? What if you mastered non-reaction, not out of indifference, but out of discipline? That's emotional detachment, not numbness, clarity, not apathy, power. When the Stoics talk about detachment, they don't mean you stop caring. They mean you stop depending. You stop allowing your identity to hang from someone else's shifting moods or attention span. You think being emotionally available is what makes you desirable? But let me ask you something. Have you ever seen a man who's truly focused on his path, his craft, his code, and thought? He looks desperate. No. Because when you own your frame, you don't chase validation. You generate gravity. You might think, if I don't open up, how will she love the real me? But the question underneath that is darker. Am I enough without being needed? Detachment teaches you to be whole, to want connection, but never worship it, to love fiercely, but never beg to be kept. You stop being the man who waits by the phone, and you become the man who builds a world so rich they fear being forgotten in it. In Buddhist thought, clinging is the root of suffering. And what is romantic dependence if not clinging dressed in romance? You thought love would fill you. But the Stoics and the sages of the East remind us freedom is found not in addition, but in subtraction. So, the next time your heart aches, don't reach for your phone. Reach inward. Ask yourself, what does this pain want from me and what am I willing to give it? Because real strength isn't in suppressing your emotions. It's in walking through the fire and keeping your shape. Stoicism doesn't tell you not to feel. It teaches you how to feel without falling apart. She doesn't owe you consistency. The world doesn't owe you fairness, but you owe yourself discipline. You owe yourself a mind that doesn't collapse every time you're rejected. That's what it means to be unbreakable. And in a world that profits from your emotional chaos, your detachment is rebellion, your stillness is strength, and your refusal to chase what isn't chasing you. That's the beginning of freedom. 5. Modern female psychology. More options, less satisfaction. So you matched with her? You played it cool? Took her to a rooftop bar? Paid for the drinks? Told her your story not too much? Just enough to show you're real? She smiled, leaned in. You thought this could go somewhere. Then, silence. A week later, she's in Cabo with a guy who drives a Lamborghini and has 40K followers on Instagram. You stare at your phone and wonder, what did I do wrong? Here's the answer. No one wants to say out loud. You didn't lose to a better man. You lost to an algorithm she didn't even understand she was following. Welcome to modern female psychology in the age of infinite choice. Evolutionary psychology tells us women evolved to be selective. In ancient times, that meant choosing the strongest hunter in the tribe. Today it means scrolling through hundreds of profiles on Tinder in a single evening. Each one offering a different blend of wealth, looks, clout, and charm. David Buss said it plainly, women are the choosers. But now they're choosing in a digital marketplace where every man on earth competes in her pocket. This isn't judgment. It's reality. The more options she has, the harder it is to choose, and the less satisfied she becomes when she does. It's called the paradox of choice. Barry Schwartz nailed it years ago. More options don't create more happiness. They create paralysis, doubt, regret. When you live on a diet of abundance, commitment starts to feel like starvation. So why does this matter to you? Because you're still playing the old game. You believe effort equals results. You think being kind, consistent, emotionally available will make you stand out. But to someone drowning in attention, those things feel like background noise. That's why you keep hearing, "You're such a great guy." But, and then she disappears into the endless scroll. Schopenhauer warned us that love was becoming a transaction. What he didn't live to see was how attention became a currency. On dating apps, in social media DMs, at the gym, in coffee shops, women are being flooded with emotional investment, not from men of substance, from men of volume. And when demand exceeds scarcity, value drops. So you're not competing for affection, you're trying to be remembered in a blur. Now, before you spiral into bitterness, hear this. This isn't about blaming women. It's about understanding systems. She's not your enemy. She's just responding to the incentives built into the world around her. Let me ask you something. Is she really incapable of love? Or is she overstimulated by a world designed to distract her from it? You're not wrong for wanting depth. But if you're seeking that in a woman whose dopamine hits come from validation, not connection, you're setting yourself up to be disposable. You'll feel the soul tax. You'll walk away wondering why everything felt real until it didn't. And yet this is your opportunity. Because when the world is shallow, depth becomes a weapon. When everyone's performing, authenticity becomes power. Your strength is not in chasing what's trendy, it's in becoming what's timeless. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." You want a woman who chooses you because she sees you, not because you're the last guy standing in her notifications. So stop trying to win the numbers game. Step out of it. Build a life she has to qualify for, not one that depends on qualifying for her. She doesn't owe you commitment, and she certainly doesn't owe you clarity. But you owe yourself the truth if she's too full of options to value connection. Then maybe you're too rare to compete in a game built for quantity. Detach, refocus, rebuild. And when you're ready, remember this. You don't need her to see your worth. You need to become the man who no longer seeks it. 6. Weaponized empathy. Why vulnerability backfires. You were told to open up, be honest, be real. Share your fears, your wounds, your truth. They said that was strength, that it would bring you closer, that vulnerability was attractive. So, one night, you finally did it. Maybe after a few drinks, maybe in bed with someone you thought saw you as more than just an option. You talked about your childhood, the bullying, the pressure to succeed, the nights you felt alone even when you were surrounded by people. And for a moment, she held you, said the right words. 2 weeks later, she disappeared. No fight, no closure, just a text. "I just don't see you the same anymore." You were gutted, not just because you lost her, but because you were punished for being real. So let's ask the hard question. Why does vulnerability backfire for men in modern relationships? Because empathy today isn't about connection anymore. It's been weaponized, turned into a measuring stick to judge your usefulness. The moment your story stops being inspiring and starts being heavy, it becomes a burden. You become a liability, not a lover, not a partner, but a weight to carry. Schopenhauer saw this centuries ago. He wrote that women admire sacrifice, but only when it's in their favor. The moment your pain demands attention without providing a return, it's no longer noble. It's weakness. And weakness, in a hyper-competitive dating market, is a death sentence. A 2019 study in social psychological and personality science proved what many men already knew but were afraid to say out loud when men express fear or sadness. Women rate them as less attractive and less desirable as long-term partners. They called it the weakness penalty. We call it the truth. You thought you were building intimacy. What you were actually doing was crossing into emotional territory that she wasn't built or willing to hold for you. That doesn't make her evil. It makes her human. Evolution wired women to seek strength. Not just physical strength, but emotional reliability, predictability, presence. If you're cracking under your own pain, how can you protect hers? But here's the twist. Modern culture told her that real men cry. So she asked you to open up. But biology doesn't change just because a BuzzFeed article said it should. So, what do? Bottle it up. Fake the smile. Pretend nothing hurts. No, that's not masculinity. That's denial. And denial leads to implosion. What you do instead is own your emotions without outsourcing them. You build a fortress inside. You don't hide the pain. You refine it. Jordan Peterson said it well. You should be the strongest person at your father's funeral. That doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means your grief doesn't shake the room, it grounds it. Masculine vulnerability isn't about crying on command. It's about knowing when to bleed and where. Not everyone deserves access to your wounds, especially not someone who hasn't proven they'll stay when the blood runs. Marcus Aurelius didn't sit around asking to be understood. He wrote his truth in private, in battle, in exile. His journal wasn't a cry for help. It was a forge for clarity. So ask yourself, are you being vulnerable because it's healthy, or because you're hoping she'll heal what you haven't faced yourself? You're not a victim. You've just been misinformed. Real strength isn't dumping your trauma onto someone else. It's processing it, mastering it, and walking forward like it never owned you. She doesn't owe you empathy. The world doesn't owe you understanding. But you owe yourself discipline. You owe yourself sovereignty. You can't control how she reacts to your pain, but you can control what that pain turns you into. And the moment you stop leaking your wounds to be loved and start using them to build your backbone, that's the moment you become unbreakable. 7. Legal systems and the masculine cost of divorce. You gave her your last name, your paycheck, your future. You worked 60 hours a week, put off dreams, poured your soul into building a life together. Then one day, she said the 6 words that rip through a man's world like a quiet bomb. I love you, but I'm not happy. She filed. You fought. The courtroom didn't ask why it only asked what's hers. The house gone. The kids. Mostly hers. Your 401k sliced in half like a punishment for trusting too deeply. And now you're sitting in a 1-bedroom apartment, wondering how love turned into litigation. Let's be honest, the system is not neutral. Schopenhauer warned us long ago. He wrote, "Marriage is the trap set for men by nature, perfected by society." What he couldn't predict was just how far that perfection would go in the modern world. No-fault divorce laws, child custody biases, alimony payments that stretch for decades. This isn't equality. This is extraction disguised as fairness. In the U.S., women initiate roughly 80% of divorces. That number jumps even higher when the woman is college-educated or out-earns her partner. Why? Because when things go wrong, the system offers her a golden parachute. For him, it's a slow financial bleed with no tourniquet. Ask yourself if a contract can be broken at will, and the penalties always fall on one side. Is it really a partnership? Men don't talk about this, because we're taught that real men take it on the chin, that speaking about family court injustice is bitterness. That child support is just being responsible. But when support means you work yourself into an early grave while watching your kids grow up on FaceTime, what is that, if not state-sanctioned exile? Jordan Peterson once said, "The masculine spirit is under assault, and nowhere is that more visible than in the divorce court, where a man's contributions are measured in dollars, but his pain is measured in silence." And if you think prenups are a guaranteed solution, think again. Judges can and do throw them out. If she claims she signed it under pressure, or if her circumstances changed, that piece of paper means nothing. The law isn't built to protect you. It's built to ensure you continue producing even after the love is gone. Now here's the trap. You think being a better man will protect you. You think if you provide more, love harder, sacrifice deeper, she'll never leave. But the law doesn't care how hard you tried. It only cares how the assets get split when she walks. So what's the answer? Is the solution to hate women? No. That's weakness. That's victimhood in a louder voice. The real solution is to stop entering contracts where the cost of exit destroys your life, to stop treating marriage like a finish line, and start treating it like a high-risk investment, one that demands legal, emotional, and financial due diligence. Marcus Aurelius said, "Just that you do the right thing. The rest doesn't matter. The right thing isn't blind loyalty to a system that punishes you for trust. The right thing is protecting your sovereignty before, during, and after any relationship. She doesn't owe you forever, and the court won't give it to you even if she promised it. So you better build a life where your identity doesn't depend on someone else staying. Because the cost of love in this system isn't just heartbreak, it's ruin. But once you see the rules, you can stop playing blind. And when you finally stop sacrificing your freedom for the illusion of security, you become untouchable. You stop begging for peace and you start building it. On your terms, on solid ground, where no gavel, no judge, no broken promise can ever take it away. 8. From provider to prisoner. The myth of male utility. You were told to step up, be the provider, the protector, the rock, and you did. You picked up the bill, picked up the stress, picked up her dreams when she set them down. You worked late, bit your tongue, held it all together because that's what a real man does. Right? But here's the part they didn't tell you. You are only as valuable as what you can do for her. The moment you stop producing, stop impressing, stop giving, you're no longer a partner. You're a liability. And in a culture that treats men like vending machines with emotions, you're only appreciated when you're spitting out something useful. Schopenhauer called it sacrificial love, a love that demands the man give and give and give while never asking why he's bleeding. He wrote, "A man's happiness lies in doing what he wills. A woman's happiness lies in willing what he does." Translation: you're not loved for who you are. You're loved for the role you play. So, what happens when the provider can't provide? When you lose your job? Burn out? Get sick? The love doesn't deepen. It disappears. It vanishes, like it was never there. And you're left trying to understand how someone who once held your face like it was sacred can now look at you like a burden. Let's get brutally honest. Most modern relationships aren't built on connection. They're built on exchange. You give stability. She gives affection. You give consistency. She gives loyalty until someone with more resources shows up. Still think I'm exaggerating? Here's a real test that was done. Researchers made 2 identical male profiles on dating apps. Same photo, same bio, same age, but one was a regular guy loves hiking, figuring life out after a breakup. The other A62 CFO with a penthouse in Miami. Guess which one got 147 matches in a day, and which one got 3 in a week? You already know. This isn't bitterness. It's strategy. Because if you don't understand how the game works, you're going to keep losing and thinking it's because you're not man enough. But you're not broken. You've just been taught to be useful before being whole. Ask yourself, if you weren't providing anything, no money, no status, no emotional therapy, would she still choose you? Or does your value disappear the second your output does? Jordan Peterson said, "A man must carry a heavy burden, but he must never let it define him." That's the shift. Being a provider isn't the problem. Being owned by your utility is. When your worth is tied to how much you earn, fix, give, protect, you become a tool, not a man. And tools get replaced. So, how do you break free? You stop trading for love. You stop measuring your value by how needed you are. And you start building identity from the inside out. She doesn't owe you appreciation, and you don't owe the world your soul just to be kept around. What you owe is to yourself to be a man who builds, not for validation, but because it's who he is. A man who provides because it's his nature, not because he's afraid of being abandoned. A man who knows, I am not loved for what I do. I am respected for who I've become. And once you step into that, you're no longer the prisoner. You're the architect. And they can't put chains on a man who owns his time, his energy, and his self-worth. 9. Real freedom. Detach from the illusion, not from humanity. Some men get hurt and go cold. They confuse pain with truth, and truth with bitterness. They get burned once and decide to torch the whole forest. Never trust a woman. Love is a scam. Stay single forever. It feels strong, but it's not. That's not power. That's retreat. You didn't lose because you loved. You lost because you loved blindly without understanding the game, without knowing yourself, without boundaries. So don't confuse detachment with isolation. Real freedom isn't running away from people, it's refusing to be ruled by illusions. Schopenhauer told us love is nature's trick. But what he also hinted, what the Stoics made crystal clear, is that illusions lose their grip the moment you see them for what they are. When you detach, you don't become a monk in a cave. You become a man who sees clearly. A man who can walk through the emotional mines of modern relationships without stepping on one. A man who connects without clinging, gives without bargaining, and walks away without breaking. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." That's the model. You don't hate women. You don't hate love. You just stop worshiping it like it's a religion that will save you. You stop handing your peace to people who haven't earned your chaos. So many guys hear about detachment and think, cool, I'll just ghost everyone, get jacked, make money, and never feel anything again. That's not growth. That's armor, built from fear. You don't need to kill your ability to feel. You need to sharpen your ability to choose what deserves your feeling. You need discernment, not numbness. Look around. The guys who are truly free, they're not cold. They're calm. They can take a woman out, enjoy her presence, and walk away if she disrespects their values. No begging, no bargaining, just standards. That's the masculine frame. But you can't fake it. If you detach too soon before you've healed, before you've built something of your own, you're not detached. You're just hiding. Ask yourself, am I avoiding connection because I see the illusion, or because I'm afraid to be seen again? The world needs strong men who haven't turned bitter. Men who've been burned and still choose discipline over destruction. Men who understand the game but don't become jaded players. That's rare. And rare is powerful. Joe Rogan once said, The only way you find out who you are is by being alone long enough to hear your own voice. Not scrolling, not chasing, just building, reading, lifting, meditating, making moves in silence. That's where detachment begins, not in rejection, but in reflection. You don't need to disappear from the world. You just need to stop letting the world dictate your value. She doesn't owe you emotional safety. Society doesn't owe you fairness. But you owe it to yourself to become the kind of man who isn't undone by either. Detach from the illusion. Keep your heart open but guarded by principle. Show up in the world not to be chosen, but because you've already chosen yourself. And when you walk through life like that, clear, centered, unmoved, no one owns you. Not her, not the game, not even your past. That's real freedom. 10. How to build a life they can't take from you. You gave her your time, your attention, your devotion. And when she left, she took the dog, half your income, and most of your sense of identity. You sat in that empty apartment wondering how everything you built could vanish overnight. That's when you realize the truth if they can take it from you. It was never really yours. So let's break it down. How do you build a life no one can steal? Not her, not the court, not the system, not even your past self. It starts with this: stop building for applause. Start building for durability. You don't lift to impress. You lift so your body becomes a fortress. You don't read so you sound smart. You read so your mind can't be manipulated. You don't stack cash just to attract someone. You do it so when someone leaves, your standard of living doesn't. This isn't revenge. This is resurrection. Marcus Aurelius said, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Stop talking about what you deserve. Start becoming undeniable. Want to be truly free? Build something they can't touch. Skills, discipline, reputation, self-respect. Not flashy, but fortified. A man whose value isn't in his Instagram bio, but in the quality of his mind, the sharpness of his choices, and the quiet power in how he moves. That starts with mission. What are you here to do besides chase comfort and avoid loneliness? Most men float from one distraction to another. Relationships, Netflix, gym selfies hoping something will stick. But clarity doesn't come from running. It comes from carving, from taking your pain and turning it into process, from bleeding into your craft until it starts to bleed back value. That's what Hiroto did. You remember him, the Japanese salaryman who got fired at 40. Wife left. Life collapsed. But instead of drowning in bitterness, he mastered AI. 5 years later, he wasn't just back, he was elite. Triple income. Silicon Valley contracts. Respect earned, not begged for. He didn't rebuild for her. He rebuilt for himself. And that's the shift you need to make. Ask yourself, if she left tomorrow, would you fall apart, or would she just miss out on everything you were about to become? You want power. Then stop negotiating your time with people who don't invest in your future. Cut them quietly and redirect that energy into something that compounds. Business, skill, legacy. Joe Rogan once said, be the hero of your own movie. But most men keep handing the director's chair to someone else hoping she'll write a better ending than the last girl. That's how you stay trapped in the loop. You get played. Then you play yourself again. You build a life they can't take when your identity is internal, not external, when your value doesn't swing with someone else's mood, when your habits are bulletproof and your boundaries are law. She doesn't owe you loyalty. The world doesn't owe you fairness, but you owe yourself a life that can't be stolen by a breakup, a betrayal, or a bad year. So dig deep, train in silence, invest without applause, heal without theatrics. And when you walk into the room, don't chase respect. Command it. Not with noise, not with ego, but with the calm, quiet power of a man who knows. I built this. I bled for this. And nothing, no one, will ever take it from me again. 11. The final war is within. Kill the illusion. Not yourself. You think the battle is out there? In the courtroom, on Tinder, at the gym, with her, with them, with the culture. But the truth, the real war is quieter, deadlier. It happens in your mind every morning you wake up and ask, what's wrong with me? Every night you go to bed blaming yourself for not being enough, strong enough, rich enough, loving enough. This is what Schopenhauer called the will turned against itself. A man taught to hate his own instincts, to feel guilt for his ambition, shame for his masculinity, and despair for wanting connection in a world that monetizes his loneliness. And this is where too many men lose the war, not in a courtroom, not on a dating app, but in silence, behind a locked door, a cold bottle, a suicide note no one ever reads. Kill the illusion, not yourself. You are not broken. You are not weak for feeling pain. You are not lesser because she left. What's broken is the story you were sold. The illusion that love would save you, that sacrifice would secure you, that if you gave enough you'd be chosen, seen, kept. But she doesn't owe you love, and that's a good thing, because now you finally understand you don't need it to win. Look at the numbers. In the U.S., men account for nearly 80% of all suicides. Divorced men are 8 times more likely to take their own lives, not because they're cowards, but because they believed the lie too deeply, for too long, and when the illusion collapsed, so did everything they built on top of it. So what's the answer? It's not revenge. It's not numbness. It's awakening. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That pain you're carrying, it's not in your way. It is your way. The scar isn't your shame. It's your shape. It's the mark of a man who's been through the emotional minefield and didn't lose his soul. You've been through hell, but now you have a choice. Either let that pain consume you or use it to carve the sharpest edge you've ever wielded. Because when you finally let go of needing her to fix you, needing the world to understand you, needing someone to validate you, you become unstoppable. You build a body that doesn't ask for permission, a mind that doesn't seek comfort, a mission that doesn't beg for approval, and a soul that's bulletproof not because it never bled, but because it bled and kept walking anyway. So, here's your final question. Are you ready to stop dying for illusions and start living for truth? Because the truth is, you were never meant to be a puppet of culture, or a tool of validation, or a slave to old fairy tales. You were built to conquer yourself, and through that, become untouchable. This isn't the end, it's your rebirth. The war is within and now. You know where to fight, so get up, breathe deep, burn the script they handed you, and write your own legend. It starts now.